right where you're sitting now.
Hi there, welcome to episode 49 of Right Where You're Sitting Now. Or Sitting Now, right? What the hell are we calling this, Josh?
Oh shit, I don't know, man. That's a good question. Is it Sitting Now Radio?
Yeah, I don't know. It's been Sitting Now Radio in the past, but I kind of just like calling it Right Where You're Sitting Now, I think that's probably
It's a lot of words.
It's a lot of words, but it's also it's the main show of the site and everything, isn't it? And it's...
Tell you what, Ken, let's say that's the name, but the cool kids can call it Sitting Now Radio.
Well,
you know, that's our shorthand for it.
Yeah, Sitting Now. I just call it Sitting Now most of the time, if I'm honest about it.
That's even cooler.
Yeah. So, this week we were meant to have Damien Eccles, and next week we were meant to have Lon Milo Duquette, but Damien Eccles, there was a problem with Damien Eccles, so we bumped Lon up, to this week, which I'm pleased we did actually, because I think we had a really good. We've literally just finished chatting to Lon, and I had a really good. He's always such a nice guy to have on the show. I really enjoy Lon. I find he's very. He's very, again, like we were saying into, he's very approachable, isn't he?
Yeah. Well, he's a friendly voice. That's what I was gonna say. He's just such a friendly voice in these hard times, Ken.
He is, but I mean, I think as we progress more and more with the show, you'll find that that's not often the case when people talk. When you talk to serious practitioners, as it were, of the occult. So it's always refreshing. I had the same. We talk again. I don't want to go too much into it because we talk about it in the show, but we had the same experience with Michael Donald Craig, who passed not so long ago, and it's just always great to have Lon on. But so this episode, what do we talk about, Josh?
Oh man, we talked about so much. What did we talk about? Crowley got defended, that's for sure. Finally, right?
After Shrek tore him to pieces in the last episode, Lon comes to his rescue in this episode.
I feel like we talked about what Lon is best at talking about, which is getting into the occult and not being weirded out by it.
Yeah, he talks, and I think some of the theories he comes up with are quite. He's very firm on them, which is again quite about, especially when we talk about internal and external stuff. I think that's quite rare in some ways for an occultist to talk about that kind of stuff with such certainty. Which
Honesty,
I found
right?
Yeah, and honestly, I found that really refreshing. And I think Lon's like a fine wine; he gets better with age. And we talk about, he has a new book out called "Allow Me to Introduce," which is his collection of introductions from books he's written introductions for, which sounds like a weird concept. When you actually get into the book, it's actually quite cool, because you're getting all these kind of crystallized versions of these kind of broader occult topics, and I think that's actually quite a good idea in a way. And we'll talk about
brilliant. That. It really worked out.
Anyway, so let's roll into the interview, and we'll see you again next Monday. Hey, Lon Milo Duquette, welcome back to the show. We haven't had you on for quite a long time, so it's great to reconnect again. I was wondering, could you give us a brief biography of yourself, just for the listeners that our newer listeners that haven't heard the older interviews?
I was born in humble circumstances. No, I'm 72 years old, and I'm a native Californian, but was raised in Nebraska, and I was totally freaked out by Nebraskans, and so I started to study all sorts of strange philosophies and spiritual practices. And by the time I moved back to California in the 1960s and took a massive dose of LSD and discovered that the only thing worth doing in life was trying to figure out who I was. And that's my biography. so far. But actually, I after several years of trying to be a first-rate Eastern mystic, I discovered sort of the Western equivalent of the Tao Te Ching in what I could scrape together as far as material for the Hebrew Kabbalah, and that got me into the fraternal organizations of Western mysticism, starting with the Rosicrucian Order Amark of all sorts of things, and then the Builders of the Adytum, wonderful correspondence tarot course and basic Kabbalah course. And then, of course, I bumped into the writings of Aleister Crowley, which seemed like more substantial meat. And I was lucky enough to meet and be initiated by several surviving contemporaries of Aleister Crowley, one of whom, or two of whom, were constituting the Crowley's magical order, the OTO, and they introduced me to Israel Regardie. Again, all of this was just pure blind luck that I just sort of fumbled my way into this who's who of surviving Western occultists, and so I was part of, and have been, and continuing to be part of the OTO, or Ordo Templi Orientis, is what their resurrection, and so over the years, I eventually found myself writing on the subject, and I've been writing on magic and occultism and tarot and Kabbalah since about 1988, and now that's pretty much all I do. And how about that for a whirlwind biography?
That's pretty good. That's
pretty whirlwind, yeah. We were just talking before the show about whether or not you were in every fraternal magical organization that's existed, or at least the popular ones, I guess.
Yeah, well, I learned early on that the organization really has very, very little to do with your education or your spiritual advancement if you don't just jump right in and take responsibility for your own education and initiations, and which is kind of perfect for the Crowley's former organizations, the OTO and the AA, because they more or less say, well, you either do it or you don't do it. So, you could say you belong to us, but if you're going to get any decent value out of the experience, you're going to have to give it to yourself.
Yeah, it's definitely something I've noticed with magical practice. What you put in is what you get out, kind of thing, isn't it?
Right. Yeah. So at the moment, okay, after all these years later, as a 72-year-old man, I'm still my private personal magical order work is the AA work that I started under the mentorship of Phyllis Seckler back in the 70s. And my outward organizational work is with Ordo Templi Orientis, and for the last 22, 23 years, I've been the United States National Deputy Grand Master, which is a wonderful, big, huge title, but with because I'm such a lazy and incompetent individual, it's a great title, and I really don't have to do much except stay alive and stay out of trouble.
Not bad.
It's funny you brought up AMORC earlier on. I was when I was at university studying my master's degree. I was kind of known at that university as the weirdo that was kind of into the occult. And every year, AMORC do a big, like, I guess like a convention once a year at this particular university. Or at least they did then. And I remember the guy, one of the deans of the university, was sort of suspicious of what they were up to. And so they sent me in to kind of observe what they were up to. And it seemed fairly... Uh-huh. Yeah, it was kind of... It was obviously, I thought the whole thing was kind of hilarious.
You're a plain-robed officer.
Yeah. Could you talk a bit about AMORC? Because I couldn't really sort of figure out a lot of what was going on when I went in there, because I literally just sort of popped it. They're in a huge lecture room, and then they had like a big set of stalls outside, selling, I guess, AMORC merchandise. But yeah, I didn't really have a great deal of time. But I've always kind of wondered about AMORC, like what's their deal, kind of thing.
Well, I don't know what it is now. It was probably 1970 or 71 when I started to take the lessons. And back in those days, AMORC was advertised in like Popular Mechanics magazine, what secret powers do these men possess, or did these? And then they showed, Aristotle and Claude Debussy and Newton, and as if they all belonged to the AMORC, and but anyway, I thought it was kind of corny. But my brother had joined it in an attempt to bring his life under some kind of control at the time. And he talked me into it, saying, they're kind of like magical Freemasons. And our father was a Freemason and a very cool guy. And I knew the Masons were serious, at least traditionally, were serious leaders in modern thought. Masonry was a driving force behind the Enlightenment. And and our father was a Mason, and I respected him very much. And I thought, ooh, mystic Freemasons, plus they have women. And I went, oh, okay, let's join the Rosicrucians. And so I joined. I started taking the lessons, which are sort of very, very lightweight, sort of like secondary school mysticism, small little sort of chemical experiments. It was a preliminary liberal arts education in hermetics.
Okay, that's interesting. So you find that there's a lot of crossover between the groups generally, don't you? Like if you look at obviously the Golden Dawn and the OTO and AA share a similar lineage, don't they? But often there's a crossover where there'll be like tarot or Kabbalah or something, kind of, yeah. Right,
yeah. And of course, AMORC has at least a pretense of being connected to the same sort of Rosicrucian Golden Dawn resurrection in the late 1800s and early 1900s. And they sort of try to trace their genesis to that same thing. But from a practical purpose, if you just ask members of a local lodge or leaders of a local lodge about the Golden Dawn, they're pretty much clueless as to what all that is, because they're understandably sort of locked into the organizational party line of AMORC. But most of the people that later in life that I would bump into in more serious magical circles, many of them say, well, I started with Amorc, and it really is a good sort of gateway drug to modern hermetics and modern magic. And so I don't regret a moment I spent in with Amorc. As a matter of fact, I became active in a local lodge here in Long Beach, or right down the street in Long Beach. And that's where I learned to absolutely love dressing up in robes and strutting around in the dark. And so I had a feel for the outward expression of the magical art form, even if Amorc wasn't doing too much magic with that art form. And by the time I bumped into a few fellow Amorc people who were taking the Builders of the Adytum Tarot and Kabbalah course. So I became interested in that, and that's Paul Foster Case's marvelous work with the tarot and the Kabbalah. And BOTA was more sort of classically Golden Dawn in style. But in execution, they more or less had the same problem that Amorc did with crystallizing the educational process and more or less, discouraging any collateral studies or any collateral development in amongst their membership. And so the best thing about both Amorc and BOTA was, for me, they taught me how to outgrow Amorc and BOTA.
So, I mean, what I'd like to do, as you know, you have a new book out, Allow Me to Introduce the Occult. And I think, because, like I said, because we've been away for a while, and because we're hoping at least that we're talking to our old audience and our new audience, I'd really like to kind of delve into kind of some real basic stuff, maybe just brush over it a little bit, and maybe talk about like what you think, how you think magical practice, what does it kind of offer a person? You know, if someone was looking into magic and they wanted to know, okay, what does magic do? You know, how does it affect me? Why should I do it? Essentially, what would you say to that?
Well, most people are attracted to magic because of the colorful art form that it is an expression of. So, magicians, at least you picture, you when you think about magic, you think about robes and wands and cups and swords and discs and the strutting around in the dark part, and working with spirits and demons and angels and things like that. And it's very colorful and attractive. It's a romantic art form. And there are some people that are just initially attracted to it just because it looks so damn cool. And But if that's what you think magic is, the tools of the art, then you soon discover that you're sort of missing the point entirely. You either discover you're missing the point entirely, or you go quite mad. And magic, for those who have very little acquaintance with the term as a spiritual art form, magic is a self-transformational art form. Magic is done to enlighten the magician. Magic is done to spiritually evolve the magician. uh, uh, people would let's say, well, I want to learn magic so I can kill at a distance, or something like that. I want to use my wand and kill my enemy at a distance.
Yeah.
Well, fine. Okay. Right away, you're telling yourself you're almost you're warning yourself that you're too crazy to even understand this art form. The thing is that the process, the only thing a magician truly changes with magic, and of course Crowley's definition of magic was just causing change to occur in conformity with your will. Well, the only thing a magician can really change is the magician. That's the only thing the magician can directly change. So if you want to be a magician because you want to force the girl next door to fall in love with you, which is a very common basement-dwelling magician's desire, if your magic is going to succeed, it will only succeed if it turns you into the kind of person that the girl next door falls in love with.
So what you're saying is it's more of an internal phenomenon than an external?
Yes, it's exactly what I'm saying. But I'm also adding that there is no external. It's all in you. And so it's you're dividing yourself from yourself by thinking you can work externally. So there is no true argument about the objectivity or the subjectivity of spirits. It's all in your head. You just have no freaking idea how big your head is. Okay. Your head even includes everything that you currently believe is outside of yourself.
It's a bit like the Robert Anton Wilson used to use a Buddhist phrase all the time. He'd say, who is the master that makes the great grass green? Is that it? Or who's the great master that makes the grass green? In other words, you're the master that makes the grass green, because it's all in your head. Kind of, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Correct. And objective reality has the habit of trying to talk you out of that, like when you bump your head in the car, getting in the car, you go, oh, is that all in my head? Ouch. But ultimately, yeah. Okay. Now, that's not to say that somewhere in your diary, you can point to the fact that on such and such a date, I performed such and such a magical act to evoke such and such a spirit to have that girl next door fall in love with me. Okay, let's say, keep using that analogy. And sure enough, a year later, you say, Tina, the girl next door, and I, she agreed to be my wife. And so I'm pronouncing that ceremony or that ritual or that magical act a success. Okay. But your magic didn't work on her. She's her own freaking magician. You don't work on other people. Okay. Somewhere along the line, your magical ceremony went to work on your own subconscious mind, which sets the stage for your entire reality, and tweaked you in ways that perhaps you don't even understand how it tweaked you. But whatever it was, it tweaked you in such a way as to gain her attention and tweaked you in such a way that once she had your attention, or you had her attention, that you somehow endeared yourself to her, and the new changed you was a person that caused her to eventually fall in love with you and agree to be your wife. Okay. Now, you can't see the 10 billion causes, invisible causes and effects that happened after your magical ceremony that ended in that outcome. And that's where magic actually becomes incredibly mysterious, because we lose track of the chain reaction of causes and effects that were set into motion by your magical working. And if you want to use the term quantum level, then go ahead and use the word quantum level, because that's probably where it's happening. The ancient magicians weren't burdened with with the idea of a quantum dimension. Okay, we are, and we're lucky because I can use that term to describe the black box we put our magical efforts into that result in giving us the magical response. But you can call it on a quantum level if you want. And my computer is making some noises here, so I'm going to plug something back in.
Okay.
I kind of feel like this is something that speaks to my experience. Like, I've been able to, like you said, make myself more attractive to a person or to a boss trying to get a job, but I haven't been able to start a thunderstorm, Well,
I'm not sure you can start a thunderstorm with magic.
Right.
Crowley says you might be able to make it rain, but you can't make it rain in the Sahara.
Yeah, that's quite a good way of putting it.
But you can make it rain in Bristol.
Well, that's not difficult, I think.
Yeah.
People are doing it all the time.
So, in a way, magical practice is a form of kind of psychiatry in a way, would you say? Or would you say there's a sort of psychiatric or psychological element to it that's very important?
Well, yeah, but it's truly psychology on steroids.
What would you say for people is the best way to kind of get into magic, as it were? Like, do you have any recommended path for people? Because I know it seems to be very different for each person, and often it can be quite a the actual, the task of becoming a magician or joining the ATO or or a similar organisation. If someone came to you and said, "I'm interested in magic," where would you point them?
Well, I'd ask them what they're most interested in at the moment, because there's back in 1970 there wasn't very much good magical literature out there, and what was out there was sort of the postgraduate type material, Crowley, Dion Fortune, Mather's Golden Dawn type stuff. So you more or less had to already have 2 feet, firmly in the quicksand of magic. But now we're really lucky, and there's lots of very, very good introductory books that will give you at least the opportunity to see what in this you might be attracted to, and so I can easily point to a book by my late great friend Donald Michael Craig, who wrote a book, Modern Magic.
Yeah,
it's just a wonderful book, and it's like Regardie was for me. Regardie, I heard terrible, terrible things about Aleister Crowley and was a very superstitious young man. And I read a couple things by Israel Regardie. And I said, this guy's sane. I like this guy, and I eventually ended up meeting him. But anyway, you need to read a sane person's view on magic and not a comic book version of magic. And Don Craig's Modern Magic is a perfect place to start. When I started writing the books that I wished that I would have read as a beginner to maybe knock 15 or 20 years off my learning curve. And so I wrote a book called The Magic of Aleister Crowley, which more or less is the handbook of his basic rituals and shows how they evolved and how they were developed. And if you're into tarot cards and feel that that's sort of a non-threatening way to express your desire to learn more about the Western magical tradition, then I'd start with the published material of Paul Foster Case. And that will allow you to simultaneously learn basic Kabbalah and basic tarot at the same time. So I just tell anybody who wanted to get involved with it to, first of all, to trust their own instincts, point them to a couple of preliminary books and tell them for about a year or two, just read what seems to attract them the most.
Yeah, I mean, Donald Michael Craig was a guest on our show, and he was a really wonderful person. It was really sad that he passed away. I felt that was a real loss to the to the magical community, kind of thing. Did you know him quite well? Or?
Yes. Well, first of all, both of us appear regularly at or did at these large pagan gatherings. And we're usually kind of the featured speakers or speakers at these pagan gatherings. So we kept bumping into each other year after year, 4 or 5 times during the year. And then we also spake at Pantheacon, which is the large indoor pagan gathering in San Jose. And because we both live in the Los Angeles area, and because San Jose is a 7-hour drive, every year we would drive up to San Jose together. And those 7-hour rides became just absolutely unforgettable and precious moments because we were both generally about the same age and raised in or born in Southern California. We had so many goofy things in common. And we both loved old television shows and stuff. He was truly a dear friend. And once I told him, I know hundreds and hundreds of people and have lots and lots of friends, but I don't really have a best friend, that has the same sort of life circumstances, a writer, somebody who writes and who lectures and who is into the same crazy ass stuff I am. So yeah, Don was my, in a sense, was my a colleague who was also a best friend.
Oh, that's really sweet. Yeah, no, he was lovely, and yeah, I really regret that we only had him on the show once. I would have loved to have had him on again. He was really, he was a very engaging person and very, just very kind with his time, and yeah, he was great, really nice guy. So one thing actually, before we get into talking about your book, one thing that I've been looking for, and I've only really found it in about 4 or 5 books so far, and that's accounts of what happens after people do magical ritual or perform almost like a sort of transcription of a diary, or the results, as it were. You read a lot of theory when you pick up occult books, essentially the kind of grimoire style texts, but it's very hard to actually find books where people actually are quite open about the experience, about what actually happened when they perform these rituals. I know you did it in My Life with the Spirits. There's you're very you talk a lot about the Goetia, for example, and I know David Conway is another one that has in the past spoken about his experiences. But why do you think it is that people are less inclined to talk about the actual results of what they do, their own personal journeys?
Well, first of all, not everybody is comfortable with sharing stories of all their failures. And if they have successes to talk about, they still may be reticent. There's a difference between someone that is comfortable writing theoretically about something, even if that theory is based on good, solid, interesting experiences. They may be good about writing about the theory, but not comfortable with writing about the experience. And I'm saying that in all fairness to authors like that. To me, it was clear right away that I was learning more myself about the theory of magic by all the places I screwed up, by all of the things that blew up in my face. And then I realized that's where the magic is. I had a magic teacher, a formal magic teacher, Phyllis Seckler. And God's love her. If I would have listened to her, I wouldn't have done a goddamn thing with magic. Okay? Don't do this until you get your holy guardian angel, and you can't. And don't do a Goetia. Oh my God, Goetia, that's too dangerous. Oh gee, and she did it. She was right. She was right as far as she went. Okay, but that's not how I work. Okay, I actually do have to stick my hand in the fire to go, oh, that's too hot, An example is my first Goetia vocation, which I write about in many places. I wasn't ready to do it. She told me I wasn't ready to do it. I didn't have a grasp of what it was I was going to do. I had no idea of the field theory of that I currently espouse now about how the only thing you can change is yourself and all of that. I was still superstitiously thinking that little imp was going to jump up out of hell when I evoked it, and it was going to change my life and get me going. But Phyllis was warning me, no, don't do that. You could hurt yourself. And, well, sure enough, I hurt myself during that evocation. And if you're familiar with the story, I ended up burning my eyes with that concentrated cinnamon oil extract, and nearly blinding myself. So, but if I would have listened to Phyllis, I would have said, oh, I better not do this or I'll hurt my eyes. Instead, I did it, hurt my eyes, figured out what Goetia was all about. The ceremony, minutes after the ceremony, somebody came and gave me a car. That car got me a job. That job got me going. It changed my life completely around. I've been gainfully employed ever since. It saved the day. It did everything I asked it to do and much, much more, but only because I was mutated by the experience. So a lot of warnings, even from very knowledgeable writers and magicians, a lot of warnings that magic is dangerous and don't do it. I'm sorry, some of those dangerous things and the consequences of some of those dangerous things are the very things you need to experience in order to mutate you into the type of person that the girl next door falls in love with.
Yeah, that's interesting. So in your Goetia story, in the My Life with the Spirits, you say that you actually saw, the Goetic demon. Do you think that was a internal thing now with your new theory, that it was just your own projection of this thing, or?
Yes, of course, but there is no outside of me. Okay, so there are techniques that some people are better at than others to externalizing what's internal. That's why some Goetic magicians, especially the great Poke Runyon, has used and has perfected the use of a black mirror in order to externalize and to bring to visible appearance spirits that you're working with. And some people, once it clicks inside what it's all about, they could just give a shit about whether they're actually looking at it, if they're seeing it properly in their mind's eye.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so let's talk about your new book. Tell us a little bit about it and how it came about, and how you came up with the idea for collecting these different pieces.
Well, it's called Allow Me to Introduce. And it is a collection of about 35 years, I think, of introductions and forewords and prefaces to various books by other authors that I've been asked by the publisher or the author to pen the material for. Now, it doesn't sound very exciting because I don't know about you, but when I pick up a book about magic or mysticism,
you jump straight to the meat.
I jump straight to the meat.
Not me. I always read the intros, guys. I'm sorry, I'm that nerd.
Joshua, God bless you. But I tell you, back in 1966, I bought a Penguin edition of the Tao Te Ching, or the Yi Ching. Not a Penguin, I forget what edition it was, but it had an introduction by Carl Jung. Okay, and the introduction by Carl Jung was about a third of the book. I didn't look at that introduction for 25 years. Okay. And I use that I Ching consistently. But that's the case, okay, with a lot of people. But these are introductions to a vast array of different magical related things. Okay, like I wrote the introduction to a famous alchemical text, and I wrote the introduction to the new edition of Casaubon's True and Faithful Relation of What Happened for Years Between Dr. John Dee and Edward Kelly. And I've written introductions to Crowley's let's see, what has it been? Well, I've written an introduction to all the books that that influenced me as a young magician. I mean, books by Rigardi, like the Tree of Life and Eye in the Triangle. And these are books that freaking changed my life. And fate just had it that after 30 years, I was asked to write introductions to the new editions of them. And Cloud Upon the Sanctuary, the book that turned Crowley on. And I even introduced the Los Angeles Opera Company's opening night performance of the Magic Flute, Mozart's Magic Flute, down at the Dorothy Chandler Pavilion. And I, you know how opening nights, they usually have a lecture just prior to the performance? Well, I gave that lecture called Mozart, Magic, and Masonry. And so I have all of these things. But what makes them special to me is that I've only got about 5 pages to encapsulate my understanding of the essence of either the author or the author's subject. And I work hard for these things, okay? I agonize over them. I squeeze the essence of absolutely everything that I think is relevant to that subject, and I put it into 5 pages. In my mind, or in my opinion, it's my best work. They're little jewels. And nobody reads them. Okay.
I really, really enjoyed the book. I thought speaking of good introductions to the occult, I thought it was perfect for someone coming along just looking for things to get interested in. I'm really glad you brought up the thing about the Magic Flute. That was something I've never heard about before. Can you speak about that a little bit? What's the Freemasonic roots behind it?
Okay. Well, a little earlier, we were talking about the things that I currently am still involved in. I said the AA, the OTO, but I'm also a Mason. I've been a Mason now for 25, 26 years. Not because Masonry teaches magic, because it doesn't. Or not because any of my Masonic old friends and brothers and stuff, not that most of them could care less about any of this stuff, because they don't. It's that Masonry is, in its sense, in the truest sense, or it can be, a magical and self-transformational experience. So there is absolutely no. I love the Magic Flute. I just love it. It's delightful. It's heavy, and once you've been enmeshed in Kabbalistic thought. Okay, you start to see the structure of the universe as described with Kabbalistic terms in everything. You can't sit down at breakfast and look at the Aunt Jemima label without thinking something incredibly heavy about something. The big, the Black Mother, Vina, So I see in the Magic Flute such wonderful cosmic statements being made in such a delightful and delicious way. And of course, it was written during the years when Mozart was just completely inspired by the magical fraternity and his experience in the magical fraternity. And it had everything to do with the blossoming sort of Illuminati-ish ideas that would spawn the French and American revolutions. And the characters are so archetypal. The Queen of the Night and Sarastro's sun-worshipping cult. And, it's just so full of such wondrous stuff. So that they wanted me to give a lecture on the magical and Masonic significance of the Magic Flute. And it was just a short lecture because, everybody wanted to get on with the show. But I gave it my best shot. And Masonry is an echo of the structure of the Eleusinian mysteries. And based on the classic formula of initiation itself, whether it's Masonic or Eleusinian or Isis or OTO or Holy Grail or whatever. The formula is the same. I'm currently giving an online 3-degree initiation experience on the 3 degrees of Kabbalah initiation, which I should be working on right now, boys.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Because the 2nd degree is Wednesday night, and I got my slides I got to put together. But anyway, you've got your Yod-He Vav-He formula in Prince Tamino and Tamina, the princess, and Papageno and Papagena. The comic relief is the Vav and He final, and it just goes on, and I try to do it in a very just sort of skim the surface in my talk or my chapter in this book. But it really works out. There's no magic greater than the magic of great art. Because magic is an art. It's an art form. It may have scientific method to it, but it's an art form. It's a spiritual art form. And every magician, if they truly are a magician, is an artist. A one-man order of one, or a one-woman order of one. And conversely, every artist, no matter what their spiritual disciplines or their beliefs or their proclivities are, every artist is a magician.
Oh,
that's interesting. I think, Consuelo, we obviously need to let you get back to your initiation course. But one thing I wanted to kind of breach very quickly with you, just because it's something I've always wanted to ask you particularly, but also because our last guest on the show was quite negative about this person, and I felt you're the perfect person to kind of counter his opinion. We had Nicholas Schreck on the last episode, who was very, very negative about Aleister Crowley. And I didn't feel that I defended Crowley particularly well at the time. I was kind of bowled over by it a little bit. But I feel if one person can defend Crowley somewhat, it would be Lon Milo Duquette. And in particular, the thing I wanted you to talk to as a closing thing was, why has Crowley managed to stay kind of so relevant within the magical landscape? As in, he's the most cited of magicians, and he's the most you can't go down an occult path almost without bumping into Crowley at some point. Why is that, do you think?
Oh, okay. He was just, or part of him, the part of him that was his work and his spiritual focus, was a good 150 years ahead of his time. And that's all. That's all. I don't think I would have liked Crowley personally. I don't think I would have been among his circle of disciples, or just because I'd have been too freaking lame in those days to overlook his many and varied and sometimes serious shortcomings, personal shortcomings. Be that as it may, it's very, very, it's a luxury to be able to stand apart, 100 years later, and just focus on what at least some of his most important work has to say to me, and how it informs my understanding of not only magic as a spiritual art form, but my understanding of myself. And not everybody is prepared to see themselves in Crowley. And that's totally, totally understandable. And I'm an apologist for Crowley, not so much as I try to defend everything that he did, but because of my understanding and appreciation of everything he's done for me. And so I'm not going to argue with anybody that doesn't like Crowley, because I can certainly understand where they're coming from. And I don't even take fiendish delight in all of the on rubbing anybody's nose in his shortcomings. He had them, but if you've read enough of him, he's constantly telling you, don't believe me, we're all about 15 different characters in our lives. Okay, we're masters, we're gods to our dog, and we're boot-licking slaves, sniveling slaves to our cats. And
definitely my cat.
Yeah. and so we're masters of our little league team, but we're slaves to the cop. Obedient slaves to the cop. We're all many, many people. And the biggest trouble with Aleister Crowley is all the Crowleys that were Crowley were over the top and completely audacious and colorful.
In public too, right?
In public.
Yeah. I think it's. I mean, it's. Why do you think that Crowley has? I mean, he's. He came from the Golden Dawn, essentially, didn't he? But I think a lot more people have heard of Crowley than they've heard of the Golden Dawn, for example. Why do you think that is? What's it he's done that's kind of resonated, do you think, with so many people and given him this kind of longevity?
The great artists that they admire, who admire Crowley. Crowley might not have got off to the start that he got off if not for a piece of art that the entire world was waiting for. Literally, the entire world was waiting for a single piece of art with bated breath. It was going to be the most celebrated work of art in the world. And they waited for it, and it arrived, and it disappointed hardly anyone. And it was Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. And the cover of that had Aleister Crowley on it, and the people who are really into it dissected every one of those characters on the cover and tried to find out who they are. Why was Sri Yukteswar on there? Why was Babaji on there? Who's this guy standing next to Mae West? That's Aleister Crowley. Well, who's Aleister Crowley? Oh, John Lennon liked Aleister Crowley. Well, it seemed like a lot of lots of them like Aleister Crowley. Ooh, do what thou wilt. That was a quantum leap in human consciousness. Okay? It would have taken another 50 years for Aleister Crowley to be discovered. But the Beatles, 20 years to the day after Crowley's death, resurrected him.
It's interesting, isn't it? He's definitely managed to survive, and that's an interesting thing. So, if people want
besides he's so incredibly colorful.
Oh yeah.
And as wild and crazy as our lives are today, we need a little color. And Crowley's color is a welcome diversion that also informs, and if you are honest with yourself, will end up inspiring you. And so and we have to remember he was doing all of this stuff, a life that would completely fill the diaries of 20 normal men. And he was doing it all while busily working with British intelligence, busily starting World War I. Busily writing poetry, a lot of which I can take or leave.
That's a common thread with Crowley. I've noticed that it's the poetry. People can take it or leave it. Definitely, regardless of the person commenting on him. That seems to be a very common thread. But I think one of the things is he's actually quite funny as well. And I know it's something Robert Anton Wilson used to go on about, but Crowley's very funny when you read.
Oh, he's so funny.
Yeah, if you read Confessions, especially, I've just been rereading that recently, and it's hilarious. Some of I love it. He's fantastic in that sense, which is lovely because a lot of you read people like members of the Golden Dawn's text in particular. What's his name? Is it Waite? Who wrote the Black
Arthur
Magic?
Edward Waite, yes.
He's the most dry occult author I think I've ever read. But you want that. I mean, this is something I think you do as well, Lon. You kind of want an element of accessibility, I think, to this stuff because it's it's quite heavy subjects, and it's quite nice to have a bit of a friendly voice in there almost. Do you agree on that? Or?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, for me, it's kind of the only way I can be, and I instantly. Well, I guess I didn't instantly because I was so freaked about Crowley for years. Before meeting Crowley people, When I read Onion Peelings, a one-page chapter in Crowley's Book of Lies, I knew Crowley was my man. Okay. It was so perfectly Western Zen that I said, oh, okay, I can forgive a whole bunch of stuff about this guy because this is absolutely perfect. And that's more or less how I feel about Crowley. Some of his best magical work that few people, relatively speaking, get to enjoy and experience are his reworkings of the quasi-Masonic initiation rituals of the OTO. And I've been lucky enough and privileged enough for 1975, 45 years.
Wow.
To experience and celebrate and deliver and officiate at hundreds of these degree ceremonies. And every time I take part in one, I'm just blown away at how incredibly cool it was. And if nothing else, the OTO experience, because any organization, you're going to have people who like other people and who don't like others and things like that. Organizations are by nature bullshit. But that aside, the beautiful initiatory experiences that are the work of the OTO are Crowley at his best, and in my opinion, initiation, formal in-temple type initiations at its best. And it's work that not everybody can become familiar with. Of course, you can read the pirated editions of the ceremonies, on the internet if you want, and that's for those who can never actually take part in a artfully executed initiation ceremony. That's I guess the best you can do. But it's really Crowley's magic at its best, and it's very organic. It just keeps getting bigger and better, and it unfolds as your years and your awakening allows yourself to observe it unfolding.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So, Lon, if people want to get in contact with you, what's the best way? How can people keep up with what you're doing?
I guess the closest thing to my daily blog type thing is my Facebook page, and please, there's no end to the people that can follow my Facebook page. Facebook does have a cap on Facebook friends, and I'm at that cap, but I try to cull the discontinued memberships of Facebook, but please follow me on my Facebook page. And as far as my written material is concerned, it's for sale on any bookstore, Amazon, or Barnes and Noble, things like that. So just Google Lon Milo Duquette, and you'll run into videos, and you'll run into books. But my daily blog is sort of my Facebook page.
And do you have any new projects that you're working on in terms of books, or?
Well, right now I'm in the middle of trying to translate the initiatory experience into an internet, a live internet experience, because I believe, sadly, I believe that this pandemic thing is only sort of a preview of a different kind of world where we're not going to be able to get together in person as much as we've done for the last 10,000 years. Mm. And so I'm working on that now. And so what I've, just before this book, allow me to introduce, I wrote a book called The Son of Chicken Kabbalah.
Which is great. It's a great book.
Oh, good. Well, I'm trying to transfer that initiatory experience into an internet experience or an online personal experience, and so I'm hard at work at that, and I'm trying to stay 1 week ahead of that process, even as we speak.
Excellent. Well, I mean, I think one thing I want to do is to have you back on the show at some point to talk about the Kabbalah, because I've personally just finished reading the two books, Chicken Kabbalah and Son of Chicken Kabbalah, and I think they're excellent. But anyway, Lon, thank you so much for giving us some of your time. I know you're very busy at the moment, so it's a real pleasure to talk to you.
Well, thank you, Ken. Thank you, Josh.
And we'll hopefully have you on sooner rather than later.
Okay, very good.